Gaining productivity while managing Windows Azure using PowerShell. I noticed a number of well-known speakers creating very long titles. So I thought this should help. My name is Patrick van Dorp. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm a technology consultant. I'm also a Windows Azure MVP for 3 years now. And I would like to talk to you a little bit about cloud computing, obviously, and about how we can gain productivity using Windows Azure PowerShell. So nowadays, every self-respecting organization has developed or is developing some sort of cloud strategy, right? I haven't found any organization this year that doesn't think about how to implement cloud in their organization. But that hasn't been the case all the time, right? So let me take you through a small history lesson, right, of how cloud sentiment developed over the years, and what that means for our skill sets. Right? So if we look pre-2010, right, Windows Azure was released in 2010. So if we look previous to that point, it was in CTP, Customer Technology Preview, right? We noticed at that point that our customers didn't really realize the potential of cloud computing, right? Cloud computing was like a hype. Everyone had heard of it a little bit, but it was a hype and it would blow over, right? They didn't see the full potential of cloud. When we look at our own organizations, the IT organizations, they didn't see the chances they had with cloud computing, right? They were waiting to see what it would do. So in 2010, first skills. As developers, we were very interested, right, in cloud computing. We were very interested in Windows Azure, and we wanted to play around with it, right? And we had to learn all sorts of new stuff for us, right? We needed to deal with load balance environments, right? Normally, we just created an application, we threw it over a wall, handed it over to some deployment team, and whatever happened, right? It wasn't our fault. Now, with cloud, we had to learn to design for failure, all right? In cloud, failure is a given. At every moment in time, something breaks in the cloud. Some piece of hardware fails, right? Our applications need to be resilient. Not in the way that they need to deploy themselves, because that's what cloud does. Cloud ensures that the platform underneath our applications will come up again, but our applications need to be designed for that sort of operation. And that led to all new sorts of application patterns. Well, not exactly new, but not very common to us. We needed to learn about true statelessness, right? If a virtual machine or a piece of hardware broke, a new deployment was done from an image that was brand new, right? So every state that was added to the virtual machine prior to the failure would have been lost, and it still is. We needed to learn how to deal with throttling, right? In cloud computing, we're in a multi-tenant environment, and everyone is allowed to do anything they want, right? And if one person uses a lot of resources, other persons can suffer from that. So if you're doing wrong things, like long-lasting transactions on SQL database or something like that, you get throttled, right? So your connection will be interrupted. We needed to learn difficult words like idempotent. I never heard of it before cloud. It means that every operation needs to succeed at least once, and if it's done twice, it shouldn't harm the integrity of our system. And as a developer, we wanted to get the assignments in cloud, so we needed to convince our sales apparatus to try and sell this, right? Show them the chances we as an IT organization have in cloud computing. So in 2010, Windows Azure was released, right? Our customer had heard of cloud computing, but they thought it was still very scary, right? It's cloud, it's public cloud, the most terrible name that someone could have chosen, public cloud, because that's just terrifying. We see the IT organizations start all sorts of programs to help our customers make those first steps into the cloud. Right? We had the Azure Privilege Club, we had the Azure Circle, there were loads of them. So what did that mean for our skills? We needed to keep up with rapid new developments. Right, cloud is ever changing. I think at the moment there's a release cycle of 3 weeks. Every 3 weeks there are improvements. Every 3 weeks there are new features. We need to keep up with that. Right? We're now at a point that we cannot keep up with everything because it's too much. So we needed to upgrade SDKs. Right? And we needed to do that, I think, twice that year. I'm not certain, but a number of times. An SDK upgrade wasn't as fluent as we would like it to be, right? A lot of code broke. We needed to fix that. A lot of issues with the emulator. But in 2010, we also needed to deal with real-world issues, right? Now we have this application that was hosted on some server, right, in IIS, and we wanted to migrate that to Azure. Now it just happened to be that that application exported a SQL database into a Access database, right? Now to do that, you need an MDAC driver, and in the cloud there's no MDAC driver. So welcome to the world of startup tasks and that sort of stuff. You needed to install that prior to running your applications. Salespersons are not that quick, so we needed to convince them. Still, in 2011. Our customers are seeing the benefits, and they are overcoming their fears, and they want to ask about this platform as a service, Windows Azure. Our organization, well prepared, of course, because the developers were dealing with this 2 years prior to this, they were struggling to provide good solutions for integration. Right? Our customers wanted to know about Windows Azure, but they didn't want to go all in the cloud. Some systems cannot go in the cloud. That is, take a mainframe. You can migrate a mainframe to the cloud right now, but at that point you couldn't. But take a mainframe. You want that on premises, right? But your application needs some information from the mainframe. So you needed to find some integration possibilities. Now there were 3 options. We had like the service bus, we had access control service for identity, and we had Windows Azure Connect. Anyone here remembers Windows Azure Connect? No one? Windows Azure Connect was like a machine-to-machine IPsec tunnel, if I'm not mistaken. But for that, you needed to install an agent on the machine that needed to communicate to another machine in the cloud, right? Well, I don't know. Are there any IT pros in the room? One. How do you feel about installing an agent somewhere in your? It sounds messy. Thank you. Thank you. You could have messed this up for me. All right. So what did that mean for our skills? Well, not very. They were not very different, right? We needed to find solutions for those integration things. So in 2012, Windows Azure Infrastructure Services. Well, actually, Windows Azure Virtual Machines and Windows Azure Virtual Network were released in preview. Right. So now we could explain to our customers that Windows Azure was not only a platform as a service where you had to do loads of stuff to get your application running in the cloud. No, if the ROI was too low, you could simply install it on a virtual machine and just saving the cost of your iron, right? So we needed to explain this, and this also improved the integration options, right? Now we could set up a site-to-site VPN tunnel. That's something an IT pro understands. Site-to-site VPN tunnel, Cisco configuration scripts. That's great. Now it was there, right? So now we could talk. In our own organization, we were playing with those virtual machines and with those virtual networks to create like developer and test environments, right? Or training environments. If you have like a training for 30 people and you have like 15 VMs, you can have 2 people per VM working. It worked, right? And actually we used PowerShell for this to deploy the 30 VMs. I'll come to that later. So now we had our complete story, right? Everyone seen this picture? Yeah? Okay. So now we had a complete story, right? If we went from on-premises to IaaS, we invest less. From IaaS to PaaS, we manage less. And thus, we pay less, right? And software as a service, I always explain as like packaged software versus custom software, right? It's an obvious choice. If there's like a software as a service offering for some functionality you need, go for that. If it isn't, try platform as a service. If the ROI is too low on platform as a service, install it on infrastructure as a service, right? So that was our story, and still is. Right, so if we invest less, we manage less, we pay less, right? Happy customer. And we go on. Suddenly, next to the developer skills we had, right? We still needed to keep up with the rapid new deployments. Breaking changes didn't just go away, they remained. But suddenly we needed to learn about Hyper-V, and we needed to learn about classless inter-domain routing, network addressing schemes, and that sort of stuff. We needed to learn about VPN, Linux. All this stuff we had learned way back at school somewhere, but we couldn't remember what it was, right? So let's get the IT pro convinced and excite them to learn about this, right? That was our task for 2012. Now, 2013. This presentation is from last year, Cloudburst, and so I haven't picked up 2014. So the rest of these. So now the benefits do outweigh the doubts of the customer. And they are defining this integral cloud strategy. Now, as surprising as it may seem, we are dealing now with customers that are asking us to migrate their entire data centers to Windows Azure, right? And for some customers, that's a viable solution. Not for all customers, but there are multiple customers now asking for solutions like this. So just imagine, for the rest of the talk, just imagine that everything we are doing is not for one server or one subnet or whatever, but it's for 200 servers or 300 servers, right? So now the IT pro learns about Windows Azure VM. The IT pro learns about virtual network. The IT pro learns about cloud services, because that's a very different concept. Well, Linux. And now also the sales on the IT pro side will try and sell this. And they're picking this up very well, right? In the beginning, IT pros were sort of threatened by public cloud, and you see them now picking up the public cloud very well, and they really found their place in the whole thing. But the most important skill to me is PowerShell. If you look at any Microsoft product at this moment, any Microsoft product ships with PowerShell commandlets, and that's That's really something. So also Windows Azure ships with PowerShell. Now, PowerShell, is that for a developer or for an IT pro? Anyone? What are your thoughts? When you hear PowerShell, developers, are you excited? I see smiling faces, so there must be. Okay. Let me start by some introduction PowerShell. Anyone here uses PowerShell? Yeah, a number. Okay. So then you must know what this does. Anyone else knows what this does? Yeah? Okay, it shows you a list of files and directories, right? Anyone knows what this does? Yes? Any Linux? What does it do? It's Linux. And it does exactly the same, right? Now why is that? There's something different here. As you can see, I have the PS here in front of my prompt, indicating that I'm in PowerShell. And if I go to dir, I can do all sorts of things. I can recurse. I can get like it's not very interesting if I do it in this this directory. I can filter all the directories of my C drive, right? These are all directories. But I can also filter all my files. I'll try to do that in CMD, right? So there's a lot more going on here than just dir. So what did they do? Did they rewrite dir? All right? No, they haven't. If I execute a small commandlet, that's get alias for dir, I can see that dir is an alias for get child item. Right? And the verb dash noun notation is typical for PowerShell. All right. So if I do get child item, I get exactly the same, right? I get a list of. Now, what is this list that I'm getting? Is this just text, right? This seems IT pro, right? Dir and something on the command prompt, right? So, but what is dir? What does it return? Well, there is this commandlet that says saying get member, right? Anyone not knows what this character means? This character is a pipe, right? So the output of this command will be given to as input for this command, right? So this piece of text will be imported in here. Or will it? No, it will not. Look what it returns. It returns system.io.fileinfo. Developers, do we know that? Right. So this is developer. If you try to explain this to an IT pro that doesn't have any PowerShell background, because then they're really confused, right? This is something that is hard to comprehend for an IT pro. For developers, this is simple, right? Okay, that's what I wanted to show. Okay, so I think it's for both. I think it's interesting for both. So why PowerShell? We have this nice portal, right, where we can do a lot of things. Well, first of all, we are working in Visual Studio, right, as a developer. We need to open up a browser, an IT pro as well. We need to open up a browser, so a context switch. We need to log in, and actually there's one page before this. That's the Home Realm Discovery page. that determines whether you're logging in with your Microsoft account or your organizational account. Then you get to this account, to this page. Here you need to log in, and then we wait. Anyone notice? Yeah? Okay. Takes a while, right? And then we get this screen. We wait a little more. And then finally we get to this screen. Now this is great if you want to show off to your friends how many things you are doing with Windows Azure, right? This is great. I'm not even doing that much. It's clipped on the bottom, right? But for a certain product of us, we have like 4 pages, things like this. Not very useful, right? I can sort it. Just imagine that when you have like 200 cloud services, how would that look in here? And how can you find that one cloud service you want to manage, right? Well, you go to cloud services, and you get only the 200 you need. Oh, that doesn't fit, right? So that's basically what I want to bring to you, is that the graphical interface, because I like the portal, right? And I like graphical user interfaces, but for large environments, it's not really useful. Now, obviously, we don't need to go to the portal. We can do this in Visual Studio. The tooling has improved. But again, in Visual Studio, we cannot filter 200 cloud services. In fact, the cloud services you see over here are all the cloud services for all the subscriptions I am entitled to. So it's even worse, right? Also, I cannot change a lot of things. I'm very dependent on what the tool makers bring. So, but in Visual Studio, there is this one thing I really like. That's NuGet. Anyone here heard about NuGet? And now I would expect a lot of hands, right? Anyone here heard of MyGet? Yeah. Okay. In Visual Studio, for the ones that haven't heard of NuGet, in Visual Studio there's this thing called the NuGet Package Manager Console. Right? That's PowerShell. So we can just execute some PowerShell script there. Right? Get Azure website -name on Windows Azure. Right? I'm going out on a limb here because I don't do that much with websites. So this is right. So let me quickly demonstrate this. That's familiar, right? Now I can type and it's working. So what did we just do? Get Azure website name on Windows Azure. Now right, this is a lot of information. Maybe I don't want all of this, right? Maybe I just want HTTP logging enabled. I want to see if that's turned on, right? I can simply say select HTTP logging enabled. So PowerShell really helps you to just think, type, and execute, right? It's really intuitive. I can also just, from my PowerShell package manager console, get Azure website log. I can do tail. Right? On WindowsAzure.com. There you go. Right, it's not very useful right now, but we can pipe this output to some file and do something with it. As I said, I don't do a lot with websites, but it works, right? So I do another request, and I can see my tail coming up there live. I don't know how to cancel this, so I do just do Control-C and stop command execution and all that sort of stuff. So that's it. Okay. So I plugged my get. I plugged my website. Check. Okay. We can move on. Okay, let me show you another example of why you should use PowerShell. Right? We know the drill. We need to open the portal, log in, go to wherever we want to be before we can get some useful information. Now we want to create a virtual machine. Right? So we click on New. And actually, the user experience is pretty nice because if you're on the virtual machine section and you click on New, it already opens the whole tree of compute and virtual machine and that sort of stuff. And then we can select an image from the list. This is not a complete list. There are loads more. You can view them all and use them all using PowerShell, not using this, right? We can fill out some more, right? Some configuration, and even more. Then we need to manage some endpoints, and then we wait. Okay, let's see how we do this in PowerShell. And I'm hoping this will. Okay. I'm just loading in some variables. That's slow. There it is. So just to show that I have nothing up my sleeve, I'm just opening up, what was it, demo 2, like so. And here's demo 2, right? I pre-select an image. Now, just for your information, let me just, I told you get VM image, and I'll spare you the details and just select the image name. Right, so we do a get VM image, we get a complete list with all the details, and we filter out just one column of that details, right? So there is way more than you can choose from in the portal, right? So if you're looking for that particular image, try look here. So I'm just setting some variables here, so I don't need to enter them every time, right? And this is the power of PowerShell. You can just set these variables, and then your scripts, you can save your scripts and just execute them over and over, just changing the variables, right? You don't need to type in anything other than the variables. So now you've seen my super secret password. Yeah, you did. All right, so first of all, you need to create an Azure affinity group. An affinity group takes care of keeping all your resources close together. For sake of time, I've already done this, right? So I'm skipping this one. I've noticed that it's a good practice to just create a cloud service up front before creating the virtual machine. Otherwise, the cloud service will be created implicitly. It's just something I do, because if you want to chain. If you want to bring some logic in the piping and that sort of stuff, then at some point you will get like you need for the new Azure VM commandlet, you need a service name, and the service name needs to be created already. It's just messy. Again. So let's just create a new cloud service. Right? It succeeded. That was fast. Get Azure service. Right? We're not opening the portal for anything of this. Service name. All right, I have a service name. So this thing I did here with the dot right? A line starting with a dot, then a space, and then like a PowerShell file. This just loads everything that's in that file in my current session. It's called dot sourcing. So here's my cloud service, right? It's created. There's nothing in it yet. So now, if you recall the slides, we needed to fill out some configuration, right? So we need to fill out a new Azure VM configuration, and that was the first part of the wizard, where we needed to select like the size of the VM and the image we want to use. All right. This is actually in a strange order. I'm sorry for that. Next, we add like an Azure provisioning config. And an Azure provisioning config just tells the Service Management API which user and which password they should use, or that the virtual machine should be domain joined or something like that. And for this sample, I chose to set it, to assign it to a specific subnet in a virtual network that I previously created. Right, so I can just execute this, and that didn't work. Why is that? All right. I skipped something. So first, we need to set like a subscription. This is something I forgot. I'm sorry. So we need to set like a subscription. Right? I can say get Azure subscription. I get a full list of all subscriptions. I can say get Azure subscription current, because we can only work on one subscription at a time. There's my subscription, and this is obviously not the subscription I wanted to work with. So this will not work. All right. So to get this working, I'm using select Azure subscription. Subscription. And this will be like social demos, like so. So if I now select the current subscription, you can see that my current storage account name is filled. Right? So you can set a current storage account, and every commandlet that uses like a storage account will use that storage account. Otherwise, you need to specify it manually. So let's try to do this again. Right, that was quick, right? What did this do? It just created an object in my session, in memory, nothing more. Right, it's just an object with configuration values. Right, nothing special. Now you can pipe this all together to execute it in one line, but for the sake of this demo, I've cut it up. Now we're actually going to the management API, and we're going to execute. And the service does not exist. That's strange. Oh yeah, sure. I need to create the service in the right subscription, of course, and that doesn't. So, oh yeah. Okay, well, the portal to the rescue. Nope. I don't want to log out and log in again, so that's now I have the chance to prove the power of PowerShell. Select Azure subscription. Outburst 2013. So if you can type, it's not that big of a deal. And then it's a remove service name. Are you sure? Yes, I'm sure. All right. Mm-hmm. Okay, so now let's just start over. So I've deleted the cloud service in my other subscription. The cloud service has a URL, a public URL tied to it with a .cloudapp.net. Right? It was taken, and it was in the wrong subscription. So, okay. So here I have my my config, and now I will execute the new Azure VM. Right? And this will go to the Azure Service Management API, and it will create the new virtual machine. This takes a little while, but it's not the full creation of the virtual machine, right? It will return at some point. It will validate the request, and at some point it will say, well, okay, we'll take it from here. For you, this operation has succeeded, right? Like now, the operation has succeeded. So if I can now say get Azure VM service name and name. Right, and we can see that it's starting, right, like you would see in the portal. So it's not there yet. It won't work. But hey. So yeah, skip this demo. Sloppy of me. But you've seen it now. Okay, let me just give another example of adding disks. All right, we go to the portal. We select attach empty disk. We fill out some configuration again, and we wait. Right? And this example is Active Directory Domain Services. Active Directory Domain Services has a best practice of distributing logs and databases over multiple disks. So we need to do it another time. Now just imagine doing this for 200 machines, right? That's not what you want to do. So now it's actually started, so it's pretty fast. It's become pretty fast. Okay, now so what I've just shown you with the new Azure VM is that we still had to wait for a small amount of time, right, before we could do anything else. The prompt just hangs. With this sample, I want to show you how to add 2 extra disks to the virtual machine. But I also want to show you that we can do this in a way that it is non-blocking, right? So we can do this, and we can continue doing something else. So there's something called start job, and start job will asynchronously spin off a thread and execute the PowerShell in there. Now the separate thread is another session, so my current Azure subscription isn't set in there. So inside this start job, I need to set it specifically. All right. Okay. All I'm doing here is just give up a range of disks from 0 to 1. I will get like an Azure VM, and all I get is like a configuration file. And then for every disk, I will add the disk to the configuration. Nothing happens yet. Not until I execute the update Azure VM. So when I start this, right, I can now just go on and do something else. Get Azure website or something. I don't think I have websites here. Right, so I can do anything, and I can say get job. Right, I get my job. I can see if it's completed or not. This one is completed. And a job can have like a number of child jobs. Right. Well, it's also completed, so that's great. Another great thing I can do from the command line is get Azure remote desktop file for a service name. Right. So we don't need the browser at all. Name, and I want to launch it because I want to show you what happened to the disks just added to the virtual machine. Oh, corporate network. I'm sorry. Corporate network. I'm tempted to jump to this one. Let's do that. No, let's otherwise it will be too jumpy. Let's just change it here, and then I'll go to the endpoint management later. Right, this one has a public port, and this is a random port because we can have multiple virtual machines within a cloud service. The cloud service is the URL, right? So that's our single point. And so how do we determine to which virtual machine we want? Well, it's by port forwarding. All right. So that's why there's a random port over here. We can edit that. And if I just set this to 3389, this will take a little while. And again, you can do this by PowerShell, but I will show you that in another demo. Quickly skipping here just to see if it's the portal refreshing very slow or if it's something else. Right, see, and the port number is already changed, but the portal is refreshing slow. So, okay, what was I doing? I was opening up this RDP session from my PowerShell. That's cool. Right, my account is there. You all know my password, right? I can't make this any faster. This is, I don't know what this is. Should I have taken a larger instance or something? There we have it. We have disk management. And no disks. That's terrible. Oh. You know what I did? I think I selected too much. Oh. That's too quick. had some issues with this afternoon as well, so it's not surprising, but still. So this is what you get when you don't put it in a star job, right? You have to wait. Just to make certain this will work later on. Ah, there we have it. So it added my disks. Wow. No applause now. The disks are not initialized. They're not. There's no volume on it. They are not formatted. The only application that requires this I have come across is DPM, Data Protection Manager. It really requires that the disks are not initialized. If you initialize them, it will see it as an empty disk. It cannot write to it. So but this is not very useful in most scenarios, right? So let me just show you what we can do. I just changed the endpoint because I didn't anticipate the corporate firewall, right? All the random ports. So I just changed it to port 443, right? This should be open. If it's not, well, we have a problem. Now, PowerShell has this thing called remoting. So we can take a piece of PowerShell and execute it somewhere else. Right? In Windows Azure, PowerShell commandlets have incorporated this, so we can take a piece of script and execute it on our Windows Azure virtual machines remotely. Now, to secure that channel, we need a certificate. Right? The certificate will be downloaded from the VM, right? And it will be installed in our local certificate store. Now for that I need this function, right? I won't trouble you with the details. I need this function. I have a little function created that will give me a drive letter. Right? Drive letters start at F and until Z, I think. This way I can get like a hash table of or an array of drive letters. And obviously I want to format the disks, right? So I just grabbed this, I just Googled this, linked this, and just pasted it in here. All I needed to do is specify the parameters for the function. Okay? So these three functions I need to execute first, right? So now the functions, I can call the functions now. They are declared in my session. I can call them from my script. Now, first thing I do is set up that certificate, right? This will go to the endpoint, get the required certificate. It will look in my own certificate store if it's already there. If it's already there, it won't go any further. And otherwise, it will import it. Now we need like a URI to connect to. All right, and if I just pull this up, then it really is a URI, right? It's a URI object. It's not just the string. And as you can see, I changed the port, so it's now 443. We need credentials. Right. Right? Those are my RDP credentials, or if my machine is domain joined, my domain credentials or something like that. Right? So I have my credentials. And now for every disk that I've specified, I will invoke the format disk command. Right? So when I do this, this morning I got an ugly error, but it did function. So we'll see. So the selected drive is F. That's thanks to my little helper function. And it will now send off the format disk function, the script block of the function, to my Windows Azure virtual machine. This is the exact error that I got this afternoon. Drive G will format, by the way. I don't know why this is. So if I go here, I now have an F and a G. They're both raw, so they're not formatted. But G is formatted now, right? So it was formatting. If you paid attention, you can see raw changed to NTFS. So it did format. I'm not sure why F doesn't work this way, right? But this was this afternoon. It didn't work. At Cloudburst, you were my witnesses, right? It worked, but somehow it doesn't now. Okay, moving on. Right, so now we don't even have to go RDP into our virtual machine. We can just execute certain tasks, right? Just keep remembering 200 to 300 servers, right? If you need to RDP in every server, and in every server you need to format these disks or do any other sort of stuff. Oh, for instance, open up a firewall port, right? I can open up a firewall port. This one allows ICMP. This works perfectly, right? I can just open up my firewall. It's quick. Right, and I have my own rule. So that's it can be that quick, right? It's just that one thing that doesn't go well. All right. PowerShell remoting. I've shown PowerShell remoting. I will go on. Are there any questions so far? No? All right, managing endpoints. Well, I can get my endpoint information from my virtual machines, right? I formatted this a little bit so I can have a nice overview of local ports and public ports and protocols and public IP addresses and that sort of stuff, right? Well, actually, I anticipated this, but I can set it back to another port if I like. I can make this port 80. Let's go crazy. Now the endpoints are public, right? Those are public IP addresses, and anyone can go to those IP addresses and do anything they like with it, right? So you want to whitelist some IP addresses to be permitted in, and you want to block all the rest, right? So with Windows Azure, you can set like access control lists on every endpoint. And I don't think there are any now. No. And just for the sake of this this demo, I'm on all endpoints. I'm just permitting some IP address. I'm not going to use it anymore. So. As you can see, I just changed port to port 80 for my RDP session. All right, this RDP session won't work anymore. This is crap. I need to restart my RDP session if I want something like that. So you can imagine that for starting up your virtual machines, you want to RDP right into your virtual machine. But you can also imagine that when things are configured and running correctly, you want to just disable the RDP endpoint, right? So this is the way you can do that for an whole server farm or data center or whatever. All right, so now I have my ACLs. All right, this is just the piece of script I executed before, and now you can see that I am permitting only network traffic from this IP address. All right, there's one more demo. At Cloudburst, I had available like a Cisco router. Some network guy at Sajedi set it up for me. He configured it all, and that was great. But those assets need to be returned, and it wasn't that secure from our internal network. Well, it wasn't a company policy, so we had to remove it. So I cannot show you how to connect to the network, but I can show you the possibilities you can use to manipulate your virtual network in the cloud. All right. So first of all, let me just show you some nifty little thing in PowerShell. We can use this. All right, we can cast it to an XML document. That's really cool. So parsing XML is not that difficult anymore, right? So I can go to my network config. That's now a variable. Now I can go to the network configuration, right? And we can see like the elements that are in it. I can go to my virtual network configuration, and you can see that I have like a DNS element and a local network size element and a virtual network size element. Right? I can go to my virtual sites and virtual network site, and I will get all the virtual network sites that are in there. Right? So that's pretty cool. You can these are just .NET objects, right? So you can just say network config dot first child nodes. You can do anything in here. What you can do in C#, right? Clone node, that sort of stuff. So you can clone a node, change the variables, append the child, all that sort of operations you can just do from PowerShell. So it's not that different, right? So basically, the virtual network configuration in PowerShell is pretty basic. You download, well, initially you just create the virtual network somewhere in the portal, or you just hack the XML, and you can upload it to the portal, and it will configure your network, right? So if I just open my /network config, this is the XML, and we could, for instance, if I go to my virtual network, because this is pretty quick, I have one DNS server, right? I can just, this is the to use to resharpen Control D. Another plug. Yep. So let's save this. So it's really as simple as this, right? Executing set Azure VNet config and just upload the XML, and it will add another DNS server. Well, all the rest are some PowerShell tricks. We can get the VNet site. We can get, all right, there it is. So now we have 2 DNS servers, right? It's magic. It's awesome. So there's one network. I have like a VNet name that I can use. I can create a new gateway for my side-to-side VPN connection. Right? If I done this would take like 5 to 10 minutes. So I did this up front. We can get like a local site name, which doesn't work because I haven't tested it. Anyway, if you configure your VPN, you can say download configuration script, sample script, VPN, and that script will look something like this. Well, it would look exactly like this. And there are these placeholders, right? It's a sample, it's a template. You need to fill in the gaps here, and you can do that with PowerShell as well, right? And I found the simplest way is just to copy all the placeholders and just fill in the gaps in what's called a hash table. Well, we're all familiar with the hash table, right? In PowerShell, we write it down like this, and then we can just simply replace the key with the value, right? I cannot show this because I don't have a device. Okay. So Windows Azure PowerShell is one thing. You can install them using the web platform installer. But getting used to the piping and the for each structures and that sort of stuff, that's a whole other thing. You need to know a little bit about PowerShell. Right now, on Microsoft Virtual Academy, there are 2 Jumpstart courses on PowerShell, which are awesome. And if you watch the videos, you understand this is a joke. They are very, very nice training videos for you to get started with PowerShell. And I'd certainly recommend them to everyone. So this is me. If you have any questions that you want to ask me offline, feel free to contact. I'm almost available, always available. Almost. I'm not almost available. I hope not. And with that, I will leave you at the prompt to discover everything yourself. All right? So, thank you for your attention.